Hello, I'm so honored today to introduce you to my friend Suzanne Strader. She's also a colleague of mine. I met Suzanne in Lake Havasu, where she lives. And at the time, she was serving as an assistant principal at a school that I was speaking at that was attached to a lovely church. And so we have it's been 3 or 4 years now. We have become friends and colleagues, and Suzanne also dabbles in the space of digital wellness and is doing her dissertation. So I'll let you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your work and what you're doing now.
Thank you, Katie. Good morning. Yes, actually, I think it was closer to 5 years ago. The time flew by, and we lost some years there with COVID. But I'm in year 4 of studying specifically entertainment tech and the impact on attitude, friend development, and behavioral control. And I'm fascinated. It sounds super nerdy, but it's really interesting work. I enjoy also speaking with Katie and visiting other schools and really helping parents raise their kids the safest way and the most knowledgeable way that they can through this tech world.
That's so awesome. And you're also a mother of 2 beautiful girls. How old are they now?
I do. I have a 14-year-old and a graduating 17-year-old.
Oh my gosh, time really
Yes.
did fly. So let's dive in. So this segment is about all things screen time, internet safety, how to set up your sort of parent routine for digital hygiene success, and then dabble a little bit in the question that we always get: when should I give a device? When should I give a phone? How long is too long? And when should I give social media? So let's start with just general screen time. We know as Americans that all of us, including adults, are pretty addicted to our devices and probably spending too much time on screens. So the average American student is typically on a screen 6 to 8 hours a day. So can you talk about maybe the different types of screen time? Because you and I get questions all the time from parents about like, how long is too long? And I think we need to talk about what you're studying. What is the content? What are they consuming?
That's a really good question because entertainment technology is a different verse than education technology. And so what I like to do is I like to have our day think of as an open circle, like a pie chart that hasn't yet been filled in. And within that pie chart, have families sit down and really carve out how much time do we need for sleep, and maybe even research that, pull it up on our digital vegetables and find out how many hours of sleep is required. Add in your school time, add in your work time, add in your extracurriculars, your soccer practice, add in how much time it actually takes to sit and have your meals. Carve it out so that you see how much actual free time is in your day. And then you decide how much you're willing to give up. When kids realize, and adults too, realize how little free time they actually have, they're not as willing to give up the free time to be on the tech. And that entertainment tech category is going to be stuff like, streaming on Netflix, playing your video games, scrolling on social media, setting that time limit. Once you know how much time you're working with, I'm the first adult to admit in the room that I have a setting on my Facebook. I have a setting on my Instagram because I'm not willing to give more than 45 minutes a day on that particular app. And it's a tool that I use for myself. It's a tool that I've been using with my kids now for several years. They think they have all the time in the world. So when you actually bring it down to a picture of how much time they have, then they really won't fight you on, I only got an hour or 2 hours of time. Well, no, because look at all these other pie pieces of your day. And they might be on tech at school, and they might be on tech at different activities throughout the day, but using that tech for education is going to be different on your brain than using that tech just to numb out on the couch after school.
So one of the things we also talk about is when they are numbing out on that digital candy, so to speak, we start to see the pillars of wellness go down, like the sleep, as you mentioned, grades, behavior at school, behavior at home, and sometimes hygiene, like not taking a shower because we're playing 7 hours of Fortnite. So I'll never forget, my sister called and was like, Pete just played 9 hours of Fortnite. He did not go to the bathroom and he did not eat. And Pete is my nephew, and he's great and he gets great grades and he's in sports and all those things. So I do think there's room for a day like that where you
Mhm.
binge, and we all do that, but certainly we start to get worried about kids that are plugged in all the time. So let's move over to a little bit of like the tactical things that you've done along the way. And you've been very, very intentional about this. And I'd love to interview your girls sometime about like how that went from their perspective. Talk to us a little bit about parent routines as it relates to screen time that people can put in place that will set themselves up for success. And it won't be this like tug of war back and forth with the device.
I've always been very intentional and honest with my kids about why I'm managing their tech. Just like I manage their healthy eating or their healthy sleeping, and I take them to the doctor for checkups. Digital wellness is just as important as all those other categories. So I, first of all, delayed. I did not want to introduce something until I was confident that I understood how it was going to be used, what risks we were ready to tackle, where those loopholes might be. So I was an over compulsive researcher. And not everybody has to do that, because now there's people like Katie and I who will share everything that we've learned along the way. I started off delaying as long as I could. I did start off with a flip phone, which didn't go over great, but it managed their responsibility of actually carrying something from point A to point B. And it offered an immediate 911 phone call to me if they needed me for something, because my kids were pretty independent. They were babysitting at homes that didn't have landlines, and they needed to bring something with them. So I never denied them the purpose of having the access. Once we did the flip phone for a little while and I could trust that they could carry an expensive object from place to place, we went straight into a phone that was completely locked down, where they could only use texting, calling people, which they don't really use it to call anyway. Very limited use. And again, we grew into a habit where I allowed that trust. I made sure I had Bark on the phone. Bark was really helpful to me. Even before they got a phone, I actually started barking their Gmail accounts through their school. So I could see how they were using the tech. That is my favorite piece about Bark, is it taught me how they were accessing it, because they're using it different than I do. My husband uses tech different than I do. My grandma uses tech different than I do. Everybody uses it in a different way, and we can't assume that they're using it the same way. So allowing me to watch their email accounts going, allowing me to watch them interact with their friends through email was really helpful. Then Bark allowed us to grow into now monitoring text messaging, right, on the device that I offered them, making sure that they were managing group chats, constantly having conversations, never letting anything go. Because if we talked about it, it demystified it, it took away the shame. They knew that I was up to, I knew what I was talking about, and they knew what was coming out. I would even pose a question to them. Hey, what do you guys think about this? Have you heard anything about this new app? Do you know why it's out there? Just really keeping that rapport. And to be fair, we keep that rapport even to this day, talking about emotional wellness and health, and how does it feel, seeing all the bikini ads and these girls are tan and beautiful, and how does it feel to, see all these people on great vacations. We still deal with that as adults. So I don't want the kids to think that goes away. They need to learn how to manage it in those safe conversations that they're having with you at home. Another great tool as they get older is to incorporate a router so that you can monitor age-wise. I know a lot of families might have younger kids that are accessing educational apps or something very simple, but you're also managing those teenagers where they have access to the internet and different search engines. The router that I use is a Griffin router. It's really handy for me because I can monitor everything that they're trying to access, what they'd like to use. I can set time limits on it if they're not getting their responsibilities done, like you talked about, the hygiene, the chores, getting distracted by the tech. That job really is up to us because they're not able to manage that time allotment on their own, probably till they're about 20 years old, to be fair, and beyond. So using those tools along the way so that I was always looking at what was coming next. I wanted to be out in front of it before it hit me, by surprise.
Yeah, no, I love that. And then do you also do, so we do a central charging station where all devices go on our nightstand at
We do
night.
that as well. Protecting sleep is the biggest number one thing, and it's, in my opinion, the easiest to start with and the most cost effective. Go on Amazon, buy the charging station you like, put it somewhere out of the way. Um, for for us, the kitchen doesn't work. We actually keep it in my master bathroom. That's just what works at my house. For other people, it might be an office or a den. For some, when I do have a sleepover, I do use the kitchen because it's accessible to other kids, but I still request, and they've known me for a long time, put your phones up, get them charged. It's better to have that sleep. Not all kids will follow the rules at a sleepover, but I found if you put it out and you explain it, then they want to follow, what the norm is. Um, Even for my devices, so that my device isn't on my nightstand, right? Because it's too easy to quickly pick it up because your brain is busy and you're finally slowing down for the day. It helps our health and our sleep as well.
I'm laughing because last night, or this morning, I should say, I woke up at 4 a.m. and I was like ready to solve world problems. And of course, got my phone, started scrolling, started looking things up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not just a kid thing, right?
No, and you're rushed even as adults. You're irritated. You read a news headline and now you're upset. You're emotional. You want
Yeah.
to, and what do? We want to text it to a friend or text it to a colleague, and now we're disrupting their sleep. It's the same problem whether you're 13 or whether you're 45. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It really, truly is the same battle.
Yeah, for sure. So last question, kind of a loaded question. Well, first I want two-part question. First, I want to ask about the research that you're doing, because I know you're doing your doctorate right now and kind of finishing part of that, right?
Yes.
What does the new research say? So you and I always get asked about is social media horrible for mental health? What if a girl, is on it for 4 hours a day? Does that mean she's going to become anxious and depressed? We see all these headlines that are like condemning the smartphone, condemning social media. But you and I, because we do this for a living, we know there's much more to it. So when we get the question, when should I give a phone? When should I give social media? Based on your current research, what would you say?
There isn't any causal data that proves that the phone causes anxiety, depression, addiction. We bring those things to the phone use. If I'm predisposed to have an unmanageable anxiety, the phone is only going to make it worse. If I am predisposed to addiction, the phone is only going to make it worse. And what happens is that the data shows that we're giving phones at such a young age before we understand that our kids are struggling with these born behaviors anyway, that we don't give them a fighting chance. And so the longer you can delay the phone so that you get to know your kid the best, then the best plan of action you can give to your kid of this is what we're going to do. Because as much as I hate to say it, and 10 years ago I never would have said this, we have to prepare our kids for life with a phone. We cannot just deny it. We can't just, block everything from it and ignore it. It's really a matter of when and how. The research does show the longer you're on the device, whether it is the longer you're on social media or the longer you're on video games, the worse it is for anybody. I think that I was just reading a video game article study, 30 hours or more for a week is the danger zone. Now, 30 hours sounds like a lot, but when you divide it by 7 days, it's really not. The good news, though, is that if you play under 5 hours a week, it's actually healthy. And I think that's a lot of things, right? We think if some is good, then more is better. And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, even with donuts, I would love to eat a donut every day, but that doesn't work for me.
Oh my
So you
God.
just have to have it in moderation. And the best thing to go along with that phone is a relationship, building a relationship beside your kid, knowing how they want to use it, for them to trust that you're a knowledgeable resource for them. Oftentimes I'll introduce the app on my phone and we'll play around with it for a little while. And they even lose interest on it because they realize it's not all that it's cracked up to be. And really monitoring that overuse to make sure that if they have the anxiety or they have the depression or they have the addictive tendencies, it's not going to become a full-blown problem for them.
Yeah, I think the headlines are a little misleading. And, I always tell people in my presentations, kids don't use the phone as like a phone. They
No.
FaceTime, they text. So what we're handing over is not actually just a phone. It's a tiny computer with access, sometimes untethered access to the internet. So just like we would not give the keys to a Ferrari without driver's ed, we shouldn't be handing these things over. So last question, loaded question. So I find that a lot of moms are shouldering this kind of digital wellness piece, and not that dads aren't a part of it, but I find that mom tends to be the one that's the caregiver that's sort of like trying to do it all, right? So as you think about the relationship between, if it is a two-parent household, what can we be doing as a united front to strengthen sort of that approach? Because I find some people are like, I'm trying to be the heavy, and then my spouse, whichever way it is kind of lenient. And additionally, last piece of the question, as we hand it over, we know that this medium is too strong for their brains. So instead of playing this tug of war back and forth, how do we as parents like stand up to the industry? Because you have stood strong, like really strong, when other moms and dads are caving, like, well, it's 7th grade and she's on the club soccer team. So I find that we make it to like 6th grade if we're lucky. And then we're like, our kids are like, well, everybody has one, I need it. And then people tend to cave. So how do we, as, spouse caregivers, stand strong together and be a united front? And then second piece of the question, how did you stave all of this off and do this sort of incremental baby step thing in a culture of moms and dads that are just like, well, everybody else is doing it, so we got to do it?
As far as getting husbands on board or partners, I mean, a lot of times we're relying on grandparents even, and grandparents are difficult because they don't understand the risk a lot of time. For me, it's all about using our tools. So my husband was much more receptive after watching like Childhood 2.0, after watching, the programs that are out there. And there's a ton of options on Netflix, on YouTube, a lot of resources. And when I had the ability to show them, this is why I'm so crazy about this, right? Because that was my first nickname. You're just crazy. Once they saw that it wasn't just me being crazy about it, that there were some concerns, then everybody came on board. My parents included, my just other relatives, because they did think that I was just the crazy person. My kids included, to be honest. One of the resources that really stuck with me was Wait Until 8th. I came across that organization early on, long before my kids were in 8th grade, and it really resonated with me because it gave me purpose. So when you're talking about peer pressure and caving in, because really most parents give the phone for their own convenience, not for their kids. And Wait Until 8th gave me a purpose to wait. It gave me a deadline, and it also gave me kind of a deadline for me to get my assignment done. I have until this point to have my plan, and how I was going to do things. There are a lot of resources on that website. I also shared that resource with all of my daughter's mom, all the moms. Yeah. Hey guys, I don't know how you're feeling about this. This is something that I feel really, good about. What happened was I then became sort of the go-to for the other parents on, our volleyball teams and on our gymnastics teams and in the community of, well, let's see, what Suzanne thinks about this. And that's how I sort of got into this role, Katie, and you probably were similar in that, well, let's go to her and let's see. So I was constantly doing research for my friends. And then the more you learn, the more that it's interesting, and the more you know, the more knowledgeable you are, the more you are apt to defend yourself against that peer pressure. Now, my girls were not always happy about it. I have to admit, I think the trickiest age for them is 12 to 14. 12 to 14 is when they don't understand my why, and all of their friends. 12 is like the magic age when everybody's, that's the highest. It's 26% of kids get their phone at age 12. So for them to know that it was coming and that it wasn't anything, that they couldn't do anything differently to bring it sooner, it took off some of that heat, some of that pressure of our relationship. They knew it was coming, that like down to the, it's coming in July, the summer before, so it was etched in our family timeline. And it was a rite of passage in a lot of ways. And so it was something that they were so excited about, and that anticipation was exciting. And we spent so much time talking about, what this might look like and how you're going to do that. And then I didn't even introduce Instagram until 15. So they're having these conversations and understanding what's happening and how it's coming, preparing themselves for it, rather than jumping in, not knowing anything, and then experiencing failure from the very beginning.
For sure. So just to, you and I have both mentioned a couple of resources, so I just want to clarify what they are. So the Gryphon router, which I'll put in the video comments, but it's spelled Gryphon. I have one too. It's amazing. We also talked about Bark. So Bark is an artificial intelligence app that surveils and monitors private social media, video gaming, text messaging, emailing, anything in Google Drive, Microsoft Office 365. So parents, you would sync your device to your students' accounts. So if your daughter has an Instagram, a Snapchat, text messaging, email, you're clicking the boxes and getting alerts that are only safety related. So I get a lot of questions around like, was it giving me everything? I want to see everything. It's not giving you everything. It's giving safety alerts in about 17 different categories: cyberbullying, predation, anxiety, depression, self-harm, violence, threats to your student, sexting, all sorts of things. Anything that a parent would be concerned about, that alert is going to your phone, and you're seeing like a little snippet of the conversation and then some tips about how to talk to your student about that. So I always, promote, whether it's Bark or a competitor of ours, I don't care what you use, but you have to use something. You have to know what's on these phones. There's no mystery to their lives. Everything you want to know about your student is on their laptop, their iPad, their phone, their Kindle, their desktop, like whatever it is, it's there.
Can I interrupt really quick?
Yeah.
The other benefit of Bark is you see the conversations with their friends. Oftentimes their friends are the ones that are having trouble.
Yeah.
And their friends are coming to them, seeking advice, asking for help. And our kids at that age are not equipped to help through some of these problems. So it's allowed me to help coach my kids to help their friends. And it's important, that they know, hey, my mom's monitoring this. She's going to see if something is barked to me. We call it just getting barked. And a lot of it is the other conversations that are entering your child's world through these new friends, some friends that I've not even met yet. So that's been really helpful as well.
Yeah, I do see it like that too, as sort of a behavioral insight tool. So some parents are like, "Ooh, I want to see everything." And I'm like, careful what we want, like if you want to die on that hill, fine, so to speak. But I really just want to be receiving the important safety information. And sometimes I don't address the Bark alert. Sometimes I just let that one go. But if it's a safety issue, if it's something that I think needs to be addressed, then I'm very careful in my approach about how I do that. I do things like I just am driving and I'm like, hey, it looked like Chloe was struggling today. Tell me more about that. And it's like, blah, 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 so it's a lot of them filling in the blanks for me before I even start to figure out how are we going to approach this. I do always start with, because my girls are teens now, how do you want this to go? If it's an alert about cutting or depression, anxiety, self-harm, suicidal ideation. That's a safety issue, right? But I want my children to have a say in how this goes. Is it, I'm reaching out to the school counselor, I'm reaching out to parents because we do have a relationship with each other. Is it you going to the girl and saying, hey, here are some resources, why don't you try this first? I really think the approach is important. And lastly, we've got some great colleagues that do wonderful work around the country. Chris McKenna has a company called protectyoungeyes.com, fabulous website, tons of user-friendly blogs and videos, how to lock down YouTube, how to lock down, Snapchat, what is Snapchat, what is Be Real. His website is fantastic. Additional websites to check out, smartsocial.com has some great content, healthyscreenhabits.com, digitalnatives.com, like so many great ones. So I will list those in this video library for you, but I just want to thank you so much for being here. And when will we be able to call you Dr. Strader?
Oh my goodness, I'm hoping by the end of the year. I should be in my data collection in the next 2 months. So that'll be the very exciting part. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to that graduation day. And thank you so much for being here today and taking time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you so soon. Thanks.
All right. Take care, Katie.
Okay, thanks. Bye.